Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. We hope your summer is going well. We hope your families are safe and healthy. And we want to thank you for joining us today about a discussion about the success of ranked choice voting during the 2020 Democratic primary. I'm David Daley. I'm a senior fellow here at FairVote, and I'll be moderating what is a really terrific panel with some of the top experts from around the nation who were involved firsthand in making these elections work so well under such difficult, challenging conditions that we have experienced with our elections this year. We are still waiting on two of our panelists to join us. They are on their way. That is the wonder of the Zoom call during this era. So they will be with us shortly, but we're going to get started anyway and just begin this conversation. It is really super exciting to be talking about success stories from this year's elections, because so many of the stories that have made the headlines this year have been about problems, right? The difficulties, the long lines, the closed precincts, the litigation, the excessive partisanship. Today, what we get to do is to lift up the stories of states that planned ahead and really pandemic-proofed their elections as a result. They weren't planning on a pandemic, but sometimes when you do smart planning up front, you are ready for the worst case scenarios. We will have plenty of time for all of your questions. Please leave them in the chat. You can start doing that right now, or you can add them as we are in the middle of our discussion, and we will pose them to the panel. 5 states. Democratic parties there used ranked choice voting in presidential primaries and caucuses in 2020. In those states, the election went off without a hitch. Despite a pandemic, all 5 states had high rates of success with RCV, and especially in the 4 states where all voters used RCV, secured accurate and comprehensive election results. FairVote will release a new report today that examines the results from those states based on ballot data. The results show that voters overwhelmingly took advantage of the option to rank candidates on the ballot. They made very few errors, and really importantly, they turned out in large numbers. In a year when millions of voters, especially early voters in states that didn't use RCV, cast ballots by mail for presidential candidates who had withdrawn by the time that they counted, ranked choice voting made more votes count. And I think that's a really important point as we talk about expanding vote by mail, which often requires voters, right, to send in their ballots days or weeks before an election to be certain that these votes are going to be counted, that they'll be postmarked on time, right? This year, if we can think back as long ago as early March, I know Super Tuesday feels like it was a lifetime ago, pre-pandemic, but we had several Democratic candidates withdraw on the eve of Super Tuesday, that Saturday and Sunday. Millions of voters had already cast their ballots for those candidates. RCV, ranked choice voting, would have given them a second choice. So the entire report is going to be available on our website this afternoon. We will blast it out to attendees here as well. It'll be on our social media feeds where we hope you are following us. Let me turn to the experts and also introduce this stellar panel. We have with us Maria Perez, principal consultant of Democracy in Action. Born and raised in Ecuador, Maria immigrated to the United States in the 1990s to pursue her education. A seasoned organizer, facilitator, advocate, educator, and coalition builder, she's a firm believer in the power of people coming together to address complex social problems. She's been deeply involved with Affordable Care Act, outreach and education efforts in New Mexico, on place-based health equity initiatives in the San Francisco Bay Area, and on issues of electoral reform and democracy. And as our colleague here at FairVote in New Mexico, she won the implementation of ranked choice voting in Santa Fe several years ago. Vicki Hiatt is the chair of the Kansas Democratic Party. She's a retired teacher. She taught in Kansas schools for 30 years. And under her leadership, Kansas adopted ranked choice voting and vote by mail for the first time in this year's presidential primary. She'll tell you about what a success it has been. I believe we are still waiting on the other panelists, but I'm going to introduce them anyway, so you know who is coming and who will be joining us when they do. We will have Rosemary Blizzard, who is the former director of elections with the Wayne County Board of Elections in Goldsboro, North Carolina, and currently the education director with the Ranked Choice Voting Research Center. Rosemary began her career in 1999 as a director for Duplin County in North Carolina. She's also worked with the North Carolina State Board of Elections as their voting registration director and as a district elections technician from 2004 through 2011, when she helped 100 counties in the state implement the Help America Vote Act. She also served as a director for Wayne County and has been an accountant for a CPA firm. And lastly, hardly least, we will have the esteemed Maggie Toulouse Oliver, the Secretary of State in New Mexico. And the Secretary of State has spent her career as a public official working for greater transparency and ethics in government, for fair and efficient elections, and for increased voter access. First elected in 2016, Maggie Toulouse Oliver is focused on providing increased transparency and financial disclosure and campaign finance reporting, moderating the online campaign finance system, encouraging New Mexicans to get registered and vote, and advocating for good government and stronger ethics legislation. So let's start by looking back at the states that incorporated ranked choice voting into their primary elections this year. And let's turn first to you, Vicki. Kansas had used a caucus system for many years. Would you tell us what made Kansas decide to move to a vote by mail and RCV? And talk about the results with regards to turnout and participation.
Okay, well, thank you, David. It's good to be with you today, especially to talk about our successful presidential primary. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into prior to the whole event, but it was about, I looked back at my records, it was April of 2019 that we first met as a team, the leadership of the Kansas Democratic Party, to look at how we wanted to design our delegate selection program. And we had also, I'd gone around and visited with county chairs and groups of people to learn more about how they felt about continuing with the caucus program. And in 2016, our caucuses brought out about 39,000 voters to participate out of 400 and some thousand registered Democrats. So it was not a good showing. Only about 8% of our Democrats participated in the caucus. And we wanted to up that tremendously and offer a better opportunity for our Democrats to participate in selecting the presidential candidate. So with a lot, about a 5-hour session of brainstorming and saying, what would we design if money wasn't a problem, and what would be the ideal? And we decided we wanted to mail ballots to all Democrats, registered Democrats in our state, make it easy with a postage paid ballot. So all they had to do is receive the ballot, fill it out, and drop it in the mail. And then we would also offer some in-person voting sites to make it, convenient for either people to drop it off that day or people to actually sign up to become Democrats on that day. And because we still wanted to keep the essence of the caucus system, ranked choice voting came up as a way to solve that. And because in the caucus system, you get to realign, and if your candidate doesn't meet the viability threshold, then you still have a vote. You can move to another candidate. So ranked choice voting was just the obvious choice to put that on the ballot so that people can rank who their choices were, and then if their first candidate doesn't hit viability, their vote will still count. So that's kind of in essence how we went about just deciding to go that direction. And again, as we put all that together throughout the months of 2019, and then by December of that year, we started really looking at what our ballots would look like and prepare that. Our first look at a ballot, we had about 8 candidates, but as you said, they started falling off after Super Tuesday. So we finally had a ballot that included 4 candidates, and then we had an uncommitted slot. So there were 5 choices that our voters could vote for and rank those. And what we ended up with our May 2nd primary, by the time everything was said and done, we had 146, almost 147,000 Democrats participate, which was almost 35% as opposed to the 8% we had in 2016. So we were extremely pleased with the opportunity that it gave Democrats to participate in selecting our presidential candidate. So
that is a really dramatic increase. Let me get that right. I mean, you went from 8% in 2016 in a race that was pretty hot. That was the Sanders-Clinton race.
Right.
All the way up to 36% in a race that in May had in many ways been over. And yet you still saw that kind of turnout.
Yes. Yes. I think people were just so excited that they got to vote from home. And they were excited about the ranked choice voting because it's like, oh my gosh, I can put my choices down here, and regardless of what happens between now and the actual election day, my ballot's going to get counted. And I think that's very important. People, you know, like you said, a lot of mail ballots, sometimes the candidates have fallen off, and if it's just a one selection ballot, then their vote doesn't get counted. So.
Maria, let me turn to you. You led voter education campaigns around ranked choice voting and the presidential primaries. What did you see on the ground with regard to individual voters? And what were the challenges of explaining the system to them? What was your strategy with regard to that? And how did you find ranked choice voting was received?
Sure. Thanks, Dave. And hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here today. So the voter education effort that I was involved in started happening in the 4 states that I worked in. So we were working with Vicki in Kansas, and then Wyoming, Alaska, and Hawaii. We didn't actually do any work in Nevada, who also, which also used the ranked ballot. But the voter education work that we were engaged with started really kind of late in the game. So we started really working around the beginning of the year, like December, January. So the time was short, and therefore the strategy had to be tailored to the kind of time frame that we had. I'm going to quote my Secretary of State, Maggie Toulouse Oliver, who's on this Zoom right now. And at one time she said, voter education is something that should be happening 365 days out of the year. However, most of the time it only, people only pay attention to that last month or two before an election, which is problematic in my mind. We had a few months to work on this, and the strategy that we applied ultimately was sort of like a 2-pronged plan. One was to work directly with the state party leadership, like Vicki and her counterparts in the other 3 states, and come up with a plan to really provide education to party leadership at the county level and really involved Democratic Party members, right? Voters that are very involved with the Democratic Party. And that was half of the plan. So I was working with my colleague, Grace Ramsey, also formerly a FairVote employee. We traveled to the 4 states. We did presentations at executive committee meetings and central committee meetings. In some cases, for example, in Hawaii, we traveled to each of the 4 counties and did presentations with those county chairs and the members in those counties. And the idea there was really to train the trainers, if you will. So like educate the people that were then going to have conversations with folks in their communities about ranked choice voting. So the plan was to provide all the information, answer all the questions, and have those people feel really confident and comfortable about talking about this to the folks that they were going to be talking to in their communities. We also developed, in partnership with the state leadership, some materials, print materials, postcard type of things that were useful, that had, you know, on one side sort of like a mock ballot that we developed with each of the states, with specific mock candidates, if you will, and just a couple of points about how it works, how tabulation works, and that sort of thing. The other half of the voter education campaign had to do with partnering with community organizations on the ground. In many cases, community organizations that have nothing to do with voting issues, right? Like we partnered with environmental justice organizations, or you know, in Alaska with organizations that work with Native communities, and just whoever was on the ground that was willing to step up and help us with this. So we had a mini grant program where we're able to provide a little bit of funding for these organizations to help educate their constituents. So these are folks who, you know, are likely, you know, maybe Democratic Party voters, like registered voters, but who are not really tapped into the party's inner workings and are not going to really be paying attention to communications coming directly from the party, but who are maybe thinking about voting in the primary. So it was important to broaden that reach. So we partnered with around 4 organizations in each of the states, and each organization had a specific scope of work developed. Some people made some little videos about it that they shared on social media. Some people did trainings, webinars. You know, like there was a variety of things that people did according to their capacity and their interest. But that was also very successful because we were able to reach a whole bunch of people that that probably weren't going to be reached directly by party leadership with that time frame.
Let me look a little bit towards the future here as well, because we had 4 state parties that used RCV in 2020, and our hope certainly is that this number will grow in 2024, but we also expect some state-run primaries that might be interested in this really successful and proven reform. Rosemary, how might your organization works to make it easier for election administrators and leaders to bring ranked choice voting into elections? How might a state incorporate ranked choice voting into future primary elections? If they're thinking about this in 2024, if they want to follow the successes we saw this year, what kind of infrastructure is needed, and what should they be thinking about now?
There's a lot that goes on, obviously, if this moves over to a state-run election method. One of the things that, you know, I want to be a takeaway for today is, you know, elections administrators start planning, especially the larger elections, up to a year ahead of the actual election date. So, you know, if you're looking at 2024 or even the midterms in 2022, you almost have to start now. You know, when you start talking about state-run elections, depending on the state, you may have, it may require law changes, which we all know will not happen overnight. I know I'm based in North Carolina, and it seems like the last 10 years, every election has had a lawsuit of some kind. So, you know, you have to even account for the possibility of litigation. But, you know, to get ranked choice voting, I think, more into the mainstream, which would be wonderful, is, you know, we've got to start developing that message and having a consistent message early on. One of the things that our group is working with right now that I think may be of some use, and if I can find a way to put another couple hours in the day, we should have it finished by September, is we're taking a look at every single state in the country and assessing where they are based on certain criteria as to how ready they may be to implement RCV. and we're not, you know, doing that to say, well, this state's hopeless, don't even bother with them, but to simply identify, you know, where groups in that state may find a better place to start in trying to get this on the radars of policymakers and elections administrators. Speaking as one, you know, a previous elections administrator, by this point in time, we're July before the November, obviously the biggest election we've had and probably will have at this point. Coming to an election administrator now saying, this is what I want you to do, this is how I want you to think about things, they are not at all able to think on that level at this point. They are trying to find poll workers, they are trying to find polling places, and then when you add the added layer of COVID on it, this one's going to be tough. So, you know, once we get through November, at least from speaking with administrators, you know, I think it's full speed ahead on trying to get our message together and getting that information to all of the states and recognizing which states present what barriers or goals, depending on how you want to look at it, in order to make it as smooth as possible a transition. And I absolutely agree with Maria. You know, voter education needs to be 365 days a year, not 4 weeks. And as we've seen, especially this year, you know, you've got there is so much misinformation out there about everything we do these days. I don't think you can go to the grocery store without somebody having an issue with it. But plus, we've got multiple ways of getting misinformation now than we've ever had. So having a consistent message, having a concrete voter education program that we can launch now will make election days in November and in 2022 and 2024 be so comfortable to the voters that it won't even be, you know, it will feel normal, it will feel natural, and we can all, I think, use a little normal and natural at this point. So, you know, be timely and be consistent in our messaging is our biggest takeaways there.
We certainly could use a little more natural at this point.
Yes,
Thank
absolutely.
A little more normal, right? Secretary of State Toulouse Oliver, you were been absolutely instrumental in creating the kind of infrastructure that Rosemary was just talking about at the state level in New Mexico. Could you share what you've done and what's been the most important steps from your office and from your viewpoint as you've looked to make the ranked choice voting possible in future elections?
Sure. First, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. It was giving me a little warning message. Secondly, good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be with you this morning. I joined a little late because we've got our National Association of Secretary of State conference going right now. Of course, my kiddo's at home with me. We have cats. It's like Wild Kingdom here. So if you see a lot of stuff going on in the background, this is life during COVID-19. And there's my son, for example. And I hope you all understand that. So I really appreciated what both Maria, who has been a wonderful partner to work with on trying to grow and expand the options for ranked choice voting here in New Mexico. I appreciate really what Maria had to say, as well as Rosemary, in terms of, you know, she's exactly right that we are in this very challenging time in the world, in this very challenging time in election administration. And so as administrators, really all we are thinking about right now, almost exclusively, is getting through November, not just getting through November in one piece, but really trying to have a successful, very robust turnout election, right? Because at the end of the day, democracy breeds democracy, participation breeds participation. We don't want to sacrifice either of those things due to the health pandemic. And I think probably the number one thing on all of our minds right now is that we don't want a single voter in this country this November to have to choose between their health and their vote, right? So we're kind of in Maslow's hierarchy, we're kind of way down here at the bottom of just making this basic process work for everybody that it can possibly work for, and to keep them safe and healthy at the same time. But with that being said, you know, we've had some great progress made here in New Mexico in the last couple of years with regard to the expansion of the use of ranked choice voting. We started with one municipality, mine here in Santa Fe where I live, that had actually adopted a ranked choice voting option by a voter referendum almost a decade ago, if not a full decade ago at this point. That had not come to fruition due to a lack of technology and implementation, and frankly, the political will to do so on the part of the Secretary of State's office. So when I first came into office in 2016, I was committed to, if this municipality has opted for this option, they need to have the infrastructure to be able to do so. And after really kind of a roller coaster ride of process and implementation and litigation, we did make that happen. We had a very successful first city election here in Santa Fe shortly after that. And since then, we've had a second one here in Santa Fe, as well as we have expanded ranked choice to Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is one of the other large municipalities here in New Mexico. And this year we had a or I guess it was last fall at this point. Can any of us keep track of time right now? We had a very successful first ranked choice voting election there as well. So we are starting to see ranked choice voting take root. It is definitely becoming interesting to folks, policymakers at the local level. And we've started to have some discussion about it at the statewide level, as I think Maria mentioned. And so, for example, here in New Mexico, we actually have a constitutional amendment challenge. Our Constitution does not provide for any sort of runoff voting at the statewide level. So if we want to move to a ranked choice voting model for primary elections, which personally after this year, I really think we need to, because by the time we got to June here in New Mexico, which is when we have our presidential, or well, all of our state primaries, of course, by that point, we were really down to a handful of presidential candidates that were still on our ballot, even though by that point, really, Joe Biden was the presumptive nominee. But I'll give you a very personal example. And this is just me, Maggie, as a voter. I was an Elizabeth Warren supporter. I really wanted to vote for her in the primary, and I was sort of bound and determined to do so in our primary election. However, by the time we got to our primary election, Joe Biden was the presumptive nominee. And I had to make a really difficult choice. Do I vote sort of where my heart is, even though I know ultimately it will not, quote unquote, matter, right? It won't, actually designate any or enough delegate votes to Warren to make her successful at the convention? Or do I vote for Biden because at the end of the day, it's really important to me as a Democrat, right? Again, Maggie personal hat on, that our Democratic nominee shows strong support from here in the state. So that was sort of my voting calculus. Wouldn't it have been great for me personally that I could have ranked my candidates in order of preference, right? Because then I wouldn't have had to make that choice. And I know that many voters felt the same way. Bernie Sanders received, I think, the second largest number of votes in the state. Warren received the third. And at the end of the day, it kind of all comes out in the wash. But the point is that it would be really nice to be able to have that. The question that just popped up in the chat is what I wanted to end with in terms of my initial comments. In New Mexico, we have, right now, all primaries are run by the state, and that, of course, was done, as many states did back in the 70s, to sort of get rid of the backroom deal cutting that had been done in the political parties to choose their nominees and make it more democratic. However, we're now at a point in New Mexico anyway, where parties actually have the option, the major parties have the option as to whether or not they want to allow the state to conduct the primary or to conduct it themselves. We had a couple of experiments with that by the Democratic Party in 04 and 08, and the 08 Democratic Party run presidential preference caucus was widely panned as massively disorganized and unsuccessful. And so the Democratic Democratic Party then again decided to relegate the authority back to the state to conduct their primary because they said, well, the professional election administrators know better how to do this than we do as a political party. However, moving forward, that still could potentially be an option even without a constitutional amendment or any sort of legislative change here in New Mexico. If the parties were able to build the infrastructure and figure out a way to conduct their own presidential caucus, again, here in New Mexico, they could potentially opt for ranked choice voting. So we have some options on the table moving forward here in the state. And certainly as we go into January's legislative session, once we get past, again, the immediate need of really running a successful election in November, we can start to look at those options both at a legislative level and a more procedural level. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think you had a really powerful example there of exactly why ranked choice voting it gives voters more sway and more, packs more oomph into their ballot, allows a vote to actually say more than it does if you're only casting it for a single candidate, when all of us have that sort of complicated order and calculus going on in our head every time we walk into a ballot box. There are so many great questions here that I really want to try to get to as many of them as we can. So I think I'll turn to those right away. And the first one is exactly one that I would have wanted to ask as well. And I'm gonna send it towards Vicki first. How well has RCV worked for you, and how was it received by the general public? Does it confuse anyone?
I think it worked very well in our case, and we did have the benefit of having Maria come and help us with the education. So we had started that in January. I traveled around the state and did presentations, and we distributed a lot of the cards to help with. I will tell you that one of the things that if we do this again, we needed to have more staff available to answer questions. That we did get a lot of phone calls and emails, but not nearly as many of the questions were related to ranked choice voting as it was like how to sign the envelope and different things. So I was very pleased that most people understood the ballot quite well. It was pretty self-explanatory, and people had been given kind of a heads up about what ranked choice voting was all about. So I think that educational component is very, very important.
Rosemary, Maria, when people tell you ranked choice voting is confusing, what is it that you say? Do you have little tricks that you use to explain how simple it is and how it just builds off of the kind of ranking we all do in our everyday lives?
I have a whole bag of tricks. I mean, for this particular case, this particular voter education project, most people that we were interacting with, most voters that we were interacting with, and obviously all of the party leadership in these states is very familiar with the caucus system, right? So when you're educating folks, particularly grown-ups, it's very important to reach them from a place where they're already comfortable with, right? Something that they can already relate to. So a couple of things to say about that. When talking to folks about ranked choice voting, you never lead with a how, but you lead with a why, right? So the how is where you get confused about math and you can get into rabbit holes and people get confused. Let me tell you, when I speak with voters about ranked choice voting, 9 out of 10 voters probably their brains don't even go into tabulation. Like, people just assume that machines do that and they're not worried about it. They want to know why, and they want to know, as a voter, how is this beneficial to them? How does it change the calculus for them? So leading with a why is very important. And the why, of course, is based on values, right? Democracy, having your voice count, not being asked to vote for a candidate that you don't really support, just to make sure that the candidate you really don't like gets elected. Like, these are things that people can really relate to. As far as these 4 states that we worked on, like I said, folks were familiar with the caucus system, so it was really easy to make a jump from, you know, this is basically like a 21st century caucus. Instead of like having to show up to a gymnasium that's maybe like 4-hour drive from you and having to spend there the whole day and find who's going to take care of your kids and who's going to feed your elderly parents, you just fill your ballot and it's just like a caucus. Like you sit with your favorite candidate, and if for whatever reason that candidate is not viable, you get to scoot over to the other side of the room and you know, state who your next preference is. That was really an easy sell for people. People totally got it very easily. That's how caucuses work. So that was an added advantage to this project. It's different, like when I worked in Santa Fe and Las Cruces on voter education and some other locations where people are not going from a caucus system to a ranked ballot. That can be more challenging, right? When going from, particularly when going from a plurality system, first past the post, to ranked choice voting, that can be more of a leap for folks as far as like logistics and methodology. But again, if you lead with values, if you lead with the whys of it, it's not, you know, people think that we get a lot of questions about like, oh, that's so hard, that's so complicated. I actually don't get a lot of questions about that. People are like, okay, that's cool, you know, let's try it.
This, perhaps Vicki or Maggie, this one might be good for you. When ranked choice voting is used in primaries, how are delegates allocated? Is it winner take all, or is there some variant of proportional representation, or can that vary by state?
Vicki, as the Democratic Party official, you know the rules better than I do.
Absolutely. It was, yeah, you still do a proportional thing. So in our state, Joe Biden took about 75% of the vote, and then Bernie Sanders got about 25%. So it was just a very easy 3-to-1 kind of a thing. So you just transfer that over and it's all done proportionally. If it had been half and half, then it would have gone that. So anybody though who didn't meet the 15% viability didn't get any delegates basically. So you had to hit at least 15%, and then you just look at the proportional, who gets how many delegates according to the number we had. So pretty easy to calculate then.
Please discuss the issue of ballot size, the number of candidates for a given office, and how that might become unwieldy, and how to keep that, quote, under control, so to speak. Rosemary, that's probably a good one for the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center. Are there ever questions around ballot design or ballot size, and how have those been resolved in the past?
We do get that a lot. Usually it's in the form of, I don't want to do this, so this is the excuse I'm going to use. You know, that's going to vary by state. It's going to be determined primarily by what the state legislation requires the format of the ballot to look like. In some cases, it may require some changes or alterations to the current laws about ballot formatting to accommodate that. You know, it is going to take up a little bit more real estate, but that doesn't mean it makes it cumbersome for the voters or the administrators. It just needs to be something that's approached very, very carefully. And, you know, you've got again, it kind of goes back to the same message, you know, how many candidates do you want to rank? Are we going to limit that number? Or are we going to just say rank them all? You know, there are there's been some research done. We've worked with the Center for Civic Design to kind of look at what ballot styles generally are more well received when using a ranked choice ballot. It appears as though the grid style is a bit more easy for the voters to navigate. We've just finished some research on UACAVA voters as well as the disability community and what is best served to meet their needs in terms of ballot structure. I confess I have not quite finished reading all of the results. I have looked at it, and it's very thorough, and we'll be publishing, you know, that information we've got a couple of things that are sort of brewing right now in our office, but we'll be pushing that out for the public's use. And if I might, for just a second, pop back to the question about how do you convince people it's not hard? Back in December, we were sort of batting around some ideas about what to do to sort of lighten up the mood around, it's holiday season or whatever. And we actually, and it was on a whim, we sent 500 ballots to 3 different middle schools in the area. I'm in Eastern North Carolina. We did not do any sort of voter education, short of, telling the teacher, have them fill out this paper. And we gave it to them on paper, so they did not have the advantage of technology that middle schoolers have over all of us. And we got about 400 ballots back. And we did a short survey. How did you like it? Did you like to rank? Did you rank all of them or some of them or none of them? And we had over 90% of the kids say to us, it was easy. I don't get it. What's the big deal? If you're more interested in hearing more about that, we did do a podcast, RCV Clips. It's available on iTunes and such, but it's our January 2020 episode. And it was absolutely amazing to work with the kids and get their feedback and hear that, we write off kids a lot of times for not being involved or in tune with what we're dealing with as adults. But, when 90% say this was easy, what's the point? Why is this a big deal? You kind of have to say, that argument of it's too hard or it's too complicated or I don't want to deal with this is kind of out the window. So I did want to go back to that a little bit, but as far as ballots go, it's going to be state by state. It's going to be local. It's going to be talking to the administrators. It's going to be making sure that they understand this is not the end of the world. You can do this. Learning about their equipment. Again, we're dealing with all this in our state assessments as well. So again, stay tuned for September, but it's not. Ballot length and size should not be the reason why you do not do RCV. That's doing a disservice to our voters.
Maria, we have a number of questions from folks in states who are interested in perhaps getting an RCV initiative off the ground or in encouraging folks in their states to move in the same direction as Kansas and Wyoming and Alaska and Hawaii and Nevada. What kind of advice would you give them about trying to get this up and running, about trying to win this important reform in their states? I don't know if you could hear me, Maria, if I lost you.
It was breaking up a little bit, but I think I caught most of that. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, in terms of presidential primaries or primaries in general, the trick is, are these state run or are they party run, right? If they're party run, then the parties, the advocacy would be within the party structure. If they're state run, that is a whole different beast, right? Because you really need to look at the election law in your state. Like Maggie mentioned, the state of New Mexico can't do that without a constitutional amendment. So just, look into what is possible, right? What is the realm of possibility in your location, and then go for what is possible. So, if you want to have your party primaries be ranked choice voting, but that requires a constitutional amendment, I would say, go for that, but maybe start with a smaller, perhaps more local win. Like in the state of New Mexico, we can't do party run of ranked choice voting without a constitutional amendment. Rather, state run primaries without a constitutional amendment. But there are different things that we can do. There's some legislation that has happened in New Mexico where now any municipality can choose to do ranked choice voting. So look into what is possible as far as like election law in your local place. Please do that research before you get going with, gathering some advocates and having your plan B to collect 80,000 signatures when that's going to lead you nowhere. There's nothing worse than having people, getting organized with people and having them do something that's completely futile. That is not a winning strategy. So start where the opportunity is, and that just requires a little bit of research. The other thing that I would say is there is a wealth of experience and knowledge around how to advocate for ranked choice voting, how to do it sort of at the community level, at the legislative level, and then a whole lot of experience and help, advice available to you in terms of implementation. There's lots of communities that have done this, and there's lots of people that have gone through it and are more than happy to help you out. So, you're not alone. This is a growing movement. There's people who have experience doing it. There's people that would be happy to talk to you. I'm one of them. I'm sure everybody else on this call. I don't want to, share your phone numbers with anybody, but like if you reach out to people who've done this, you probably will get a call or a meeting with folks that can help you think it through and guide you through the process and point you to some like best practices. And the more we do it, the more we do it. Like Maggie said, democracy begets democracy, right? So the more we do this, the easier it is going to be to do it more and more and more. The more people that vote using a ranked ballot, the more normalized this gets. As you all probably know, New York City passed ranked choice voting. They're going to implement next year. That adds, 7 million plus voters that will be using a ranked ballot in this country. That's a huge step towards normalizing this as just something we do. It's not novel, right? So start where you are and see what doors are available for you, like little ajar doors that you can get through, and make sure that you're not isolating yourself in a silo, that you're reaching out to people who have done this, who have some experience that can help guide you through the process.
We are headed, I know we're only a couple of months away from the 2020 presidential campaign, but as has been mentioned a couple of times, elections start early, and we'll probably see candidates declaring for 2024, perhaps on both sides in the weeks and months ahead. So it's not too early to begin thinking about 2024 primaries, even though that might give some of us a headache. What can we do to build off of what happened in 2024 with the number of states that adopted this? Would you recommend that states go this road? And I'll start there with you, Vicki. And what are the advantages with regard, especially just to being certain that the party nominees really adequately reflect the will of the people, and not simply a small plurality of the base? I mean, as we head towards what could be, primaries on both sides in 2024, and perhaps even larger fields than we saw in 2016 for the Republicans and 2020 for the Democrats, it feels to me like this could really have tremendous value for our democracy as we head towards the next election year.
I agree with that. I think that yeah, we are seeing larger fields, it seems, and I think that's a trend. I don't see it going back to just a couple of people going after the nomination. But so I think for parties that this is definitely the way to go. When if you've got a field of 10 or 15 candidates, you're going to, through ranked choice voting, I think, get a better read on who everybody really is in favor of. And I think with our ranked choice voting, we saw some very different results from what we saw in 2016. Bernie Sanders pretty much took the state in 2016, but when we were able to include more people and they had a ranked choice voting system, it kind of changed around a little bit. Of course, all as was mentioned earlier, Joe Biden was pretty much the presumptive nominee at that time. But if you jump in early, if you are getting everybody in early enough that people aren't dropping off, and maybe people wouldn't have dropped off with the ranked choice voting. I think we would have seen more candidates hang around if they knew that there was a little different method of staying on. So yeah, I see it as a very definite trend for our 2024 elections.
Do you mind if I one really quickly?
I was hoping you might.
Oh, perfect. Great minds and all that. I want to echo what Vicki just said, and also tie it in with what Maria and you, David, were just talking about in terms of the planning, right? And that it's not too soon to try to make this happen in 4 years at the presidential primary level. I almost every day in my job use this analogy that running elections is like changing the tire on the car while the car is moving. By the time you get close enough to an election where even the election nerds like all of us here on the call start thinking about, maybe we could do ranked choice voting in 2024, you are likely already past the point where you can make that administratively possible. Because elections are so dependent on statute and timelines and processes, supply chains, right? All of these things, the minute that we are done with one election, we are literally starting the planning for the next election and even some of the implementation. So especially as you're working with election administrators, if you're working with a party organization, but even that's challenging because parties have their own rules and timelines and procedures that they need to engage in as well. Really starting that conversation very early. As Rosemary was saying, the minute we get done, once election results are done and certified, the Electoral College has come together and cast their votes. That is a great time, especially because a lot of legislatures will be going into session very early next year. And if you want to look at doing things on a legislative level, you need to get to work on that right away. So for example, here in New Mexico, we'd have maybe 3 bites at the apple. The third being the legislative session prior to the next election year to try to make something happen, or the next presidential election year, I should say. So again, I can't emphasize that enough. The sooner that you start, and also the flip side to that is to set expectations realistically. To Maria's point, if you're getting a bunch of people together and getting them all psyched up because you think that this is going to happen for the very next election, you may be setting yourselves up for failure. But if you have the long view and you're willing to do things incrementally and to try to get the groundwork laid now so that the benefits can be reaped later, that is going to be a successful strategy for you and for your activists.
Excellent. I want to thank all of you for what has been a really educational and informative hour and a discussion. It's been a really exciting year for ranked choice voting. Its use in all of these presidential primaries coming up in Maine in the fall, a first time ever usage in a presidential election, which I think is going to be just another magnificent step forward. We'll have the vote as well in New York that could really mainstream this for millions and millions more voters, and the growing uses on college campuses, with state parties to elect their leaders. It's really amazing. Again, I want to say a thank you to Vicki, to Maria, to Rosemary, and to Maggie. Thanks to all of you for watching. FairVote's report on the successes of the use of RCV in these 5 states will be available this afternoon. If you are on this call, I believe you will get a copy of the link sent to you. If you are watching this later online and you would like a copy, it will be on our website, it will be on our social feeds, and you can always reach out to our communications department as well. Thank you all again. This has been a really wonderful hour. We appreciate your joining us. We appreciate everybody tuning in to listen. And we hope to see you soon on another one of these discussions. Thanks again, everybody.